The morning the HOA tried to evict my family from our home started like any other ordinary day. The sun had barely risen over the quiet streets of our neighborhood. The birds were making that soft early morning noise they always do, and the smell of coffee was drifting through our kitchen. My youngest daughter was sitting at the table in her pajamas, slowly stirring her cereal. My son was half awake, staring at his phone, pretending he wasn't still sleepy. And my wife, she was standing by the stove making eggs, humming quietly to herself. It was one of those small, peaceful mornings you never think twice about, the kind that feels safe. But sometimes the days that start the most peaceful are the ones that turn your whole life upside down. Because at exactly 7:18 in the morning, someone started pounding on our front door. Not knocking, pounding. The kind of pounding that instantly makes your stomach tighten. My wife froze. My daughter looked up at me with wide eyes. And my son muttered, "Who knocks like that this early?" I walked to the door thinking maybe it was a delivery driver or a neighbor with some emergency. But when I opened the door, I immediately knew this was going to be a problem. Standing on my porch was Karen, our HOA board president. Bright pink blazer, perfect hair, clipboard clutched against her chest like she was about to conduct an inspection. Behind her stood two men in green HOA security vests. And parked at the curb was a tow truck. Karen gave me the kind of smile people give when they think they already won. "Good morning," she said sweetly. But her voice didn't sound sweet at all. It sounded satisfied, like someone who had been waiting for this moment. I looked past her at the tow truck again. "Why is there a tow truck outside my house?" I asked. Karen didn't answer right away. Instead, she slowly pulled a thick envelope out of her clipboard folder. She tapped the paper neatly against her palm, then handed it toward me. "According to the HOA Compliance Board," she said loudly enough for the neighbors to hear, "you are currently in violation of multiple community regulations." My wife had stepped into the hallway behind me now. "What violations?" she asked, confused. Karen ignored her completely. She pointed to the envelope. "Inside this notice," Karen continued, "you'll find documentation explaining that your property is being seized due to unpaid HOA fines and repeated noncompliance." I actually laughed, not because it was funny, but because it sounded so ridiculous. "Seized?" I said. Karen nodded. "Yes, and under the authority of the HOA charter, you and your family have 48 hours to vacate this property." For a moment, nobody said anything. My daughter slowly walked into the hallway behind my wife. "Mom, what does vacate mean?" she asked quietly. My wife didn't answer, because she was staring at Karen like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "We've lived here for 12 years, my wife said finally. "We've paid every bill." Karen shrugged. "Unfortunately, the HOA records say otherwise." She turned slightly so the security guards could hear. "If the property is not vacated within 48 hours, the board will proceed with legal removal." I could feel my son standing behind me now. "Wait, are they kicking us out?" he whispered. Karen looked around the street like she was enjoying the attention. A few neighbors had started peeking through their curtains. Karen loved an audience. She always had. But what Karen didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that the land she was standing on had a history she clearly didn't understand. And if she had done even 10 minutes of research before showing up at my door, she would have realized something very important. This neighborhood existed because of me. But Karen didn't know that yet. And the worst part? She thought she was about to win. Karen stood on my porch like she owned the place. Clipboard in one hand, eviction notice in the other. The tow truck engine was still idling quietly down the street, like it was waiting for permission to start hauling away our lives. My wife was gripping my arm so tightly I could feel her hands shaking. "Please tell me this is some kind of mistake," she whispered. But Karen heard her. "Oh, it's not a mistake," Karen said immediately. "The HOA board voted unanimously." She said the word unanimously like it made her powerful, like it meant she couldn't possibly be wrong. But Karen didn't understand something very important about this neighborhood. You see, 20 years ago, none of this existed. There were no houses, no paved streets, no security gates, no HOA, just dirt roads, empty fields, and a handful of old oak trees. I remember the first time I stood on this land. The wind was blowing through tall grass, and everyone else thought the place was worthless. But I didn't. I saw something different. I saw a community. I spent the next 5 years of my life building it, negotiating land deals, designing the streets, overseeing construction crews in the middle of scorching summer heat. I watched the first house go up on this block. I watched families move in. I watched kids ride bikes down streets that used to be nothing but mud. And eventually, the HOA was formed to manage the neighborhood. By that time, I had already stepped away from the development side of things. Life moved on. Families changed. People like Karen eventually moved in, thinking the place had always looked like this. They never stopped to ask who actually built it. Karen cleared her throat loudly. "So," she said impatiently, "will you be cooperating with the 48-hour notice?" I looked at the envelope she had handed me. Then I looked at the street. Then I looked back at Karen. And suddenly, I started smiling. Not a big smile, just enough to make Karen uncomfortable. "What's funny?" she asked. I slowly stepped outside onto the porch. The security guards shifted awkwardly. Karen frowned. "You should probably read that notice," she said sharply. "Oh, I will," I replied calmly. "But first, I think you should see something." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Karen rolled her eyes. "If you're planning to call a lawyer." "Oh no," I said. "I'm not calling a lawyer." I tapped the screen, then held the phone up so she could see. Karen squinted, and then her confident smile slowly disappeared. Because on the screen was an old document. A document with the original development seal of the neighborhood, and one name printed clearly across the bottom. Mine. Karen blinked. "That doesn't mean anything," she said quickly. But suddenly her voice didn't sound as confident. The truth was, Karen had just made a mistake so big. It was about to destroy her position on the HOA board. And in about 20 minutes, someone else was going to arrive who would make that very clear. Someone Karen definitely wasn't expecting. The county sheriff. And when he stepped out of his car, the look on Karen's face was something I'll never forget. Karen's confident smile was fading. The clipboard in her hand barely stayed still, like the mask of control was slipping. People can shout rules and fines. They can wave HOA notices like weapons. But when truth arrives, silence follows. She glanced at the document on my phone, then quickly looked away. "That doesn't prove anything," she said, voice slightly shaky. The security guards exchanged uneasy looks. The tow truck down the street suddenly fell out of place, like it had been sent for the wrong reason. My wife stood behind me, holding our daughter's hand. I could see worry in her eyes. This wasn't just an HOA disagreement. It was about our home, our peace. Someone had decided we didn't deserve it. Karen cleared her throat. 48 hours, Karen repeated. Comply or face legal action. She tried to sound powerful, but the crack in her voice told another story. I stepped forward calmly. "Let's talk." "There's nothing to talk about," she replied. I nodded. "Rules matter." She blinked. "But history matters too." Her frown deepened. "What are you saying?" I held up the document. "This neighborhood exists because I developed it." For a moment, everything went quiet. Neighbors watching from their windows stepped outside. Karen swallowed. "That doesn't matter. HOA decisions stand." I pointed down the street. That road used to be empty land. I remember pouring the first foundation. Her expression changed. Behind her, the security guards shifted nervously. "You sent a tow truck to my home," I said. "Standard procedure," she replied. Cold words. "Which violation?" I asked. Silence. No answer. Just authority. 20 minutes later, the sheriff arrived. Karen explained, "This property is being seized due to HOA violations." The sheriff looked at the document I handed him. After a moment, he turned to Karen. "This document predates the HOA action." Her face went pale. "That can't be right." But it was. "This is a civil matter," the sheriff said. "You should speak with legal before doing anything else." The tow truck driver quietly backed away. Karen had no response. Soon she left, followed by the security guards. The tow truck drove off. The street returned to normal. But everyone had seen what happened. Because sometimes the people you underestimate are the ones who built the place you live in.